going to go ahead and get things started. My name is Ashley Stafford, and I am the moderator for today's presentation. I want to thank you all again for being here with us today. So we just have a few housekeeping things to go over. All but the speaker will be muted for today's webinar presentation so we can stay on track. After the presentation, we'll open up for the webinar for a Q&A session. Please fill out the question box and we will have the presenter answer the questions in the order they are received. When the presentation is finished, you will receive an email outlining how to get your information to us concerning your free directory listed on CJB. We will also have CJB's contact information at the end of the Q&A session. So this is the webinar console. The orange arrow by the green lets you minimize and maximize your console. The pink denotes the area to type in any questions you might have, and make sure to hit send, which is near the blue hash mark. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's presenter, Jack Turner, CEO of PansInk. Jack Turner grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. He attended the University of California, Santa Cruz, where he received a bachelor's in global economics and a master's in applied economics. While attending school, he spent a semester abroad in France, where he was exposed for the first time to both French aromatherapy and American postmodern literature. After graduation, he became an analyst for a research firm and decided to go back to school, where he attended the business school at Stanford University. During this time, he cultivated a keen interest in psychology and the central nervous system because of pain he was suffering from a herniated disc. Jack left school with the entrepreneur bug and decided to start a company. PansInk concept first started during Jack's time at Stanford. Having attended UC Santa Cruz, Jack was no stranger to cannabis and the power the herb had on managing his pain from the herniated disc. After a year and a half of research and development, he was ready to launch his product that he believed would revolutionize the medical cannabis paradigm. He had codenamed the product Ink and eventually settled on the name PansInk, based on the Greek god Pan. And now PansInk has become a sensation in the world of cannabis, and Jack Turner is here himself to tell us all about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack and kind of let him explain to you what PansInk is.
Hey everybody, thanks so much Ken Wanabai for having me on today. I'm really excited to educate people about terpenes and cannabinoids and their interactions. As Ashley mentioned, I am the CEO and inventor of PansInk. So as you can see, PansInk is an aromatic smoking tincture, and what it's used for is to help custom tailor and kind of home in the high people get from their cannabis so that it provides a more specific medicated effect. We'll go into a little bit more detail about how it all works after we touch on a few notes about cannabis and the cannabinoids. But basically, PansInk is a product designed to make sure your customers are happy with their cannabis purchases, even if they get unlucky and the strain they pick isn't quite what they were looking for. So let me take a step back. So back in 2011, as Ashley mentioned, when I was finishing up business school, I had just gotten home from my local collective, and I discovered that the $50 eighth I had just purchased was a little bit too much of a downer for what I was looking for. It was a little too heavy. So I was pretty annoyed, and I started wondering why there are so many different effects from cannabis. And this led to some research, which led to some more research. And eventually I discovered that a lot of the variation in effects noticed in the many different cannabis strains comes not from how much THC or CBD was present, but actually came from the little molecules that provide various strains their assorted fragrances and scents. These little molecules are called terpenes. I discovered that if you wanted to have a specific effect, you needed to have the right terpenes present in your cannabis. And so this kind of led me towards the invention of PansInk. Can we go to the next slide? So first, let's talk a little bit about cannabinoids, because that's kind of what the main focus is on in the industry right now. And don't get me wrong, cannabinoids are very, very important. So different cannabinoids have different properties. THC is the most well-studied and well-known cannabinoid and is what primarily gives cannabis its high and kind of trippy effects. However, THC also has useful medical properties. For example, THC is a potent anti-inflammatory agent. It has about 20 times the anti-inflammatory power of aspirin. It also has analgesic, or some know it as pain-relieving effects, which are separate from the anti-inflammatory properties. It's also neuroprotective, it's an antioxidant, it has anti-nausea properties. So, THC is a really interesting molecule. And of course, another really popular up-and-coming cannabinoid is CBD, or cannabidiol. CBD tends to have somewhat of an opposite psychotropic effect from cannabis. It tends to calm down and kind of quiet the brain, whereas THC tends to kind of speed it up and lead to a bit of anxiety and paranoia, whereas CBD tends to kind of get rid of anxiety and paranoia and just kind of calm the mind. And there are a lot of other cannabinoids. It's just that most of them aren't present in sufficient quantity to really elicit a lot of interest from researchers at this time. So that's a little bit about cannabinoids. Let's move on to talking about terpenoids. Can we get to the next slide? So terpenes. So terpenes are the molecules in cannabis resin that give it its distinctive aroma. These same molecules also have physiological properties when absorbed via inhalation into the lungs, similar to THC and CBD. So a good place to start when talking about terpenoids is to look to the field that has been studying terpenes the longest, namely aromatherapy. Aromatherapists have studied the use of terpenes to help treat various ailments for hundreds of years. They mix different terpenes together to bring about specific effects. And certain terpenes are known to be relaxing, others are known to be alerting, others are known to be pain relieving, and still others are useful to help balance our nervous system and stimulate the immune system. And there's a whole slew of different effects that terpenes have. And terpenes are just the molecules that give foods their flavors, give plants their scents, give flowers their scents. And they've been used and are very, very safe to use for, because they've just been part of our diet since we were way back in time. So terpenes, very cool, very new kind of research area in cannabis medicine. Let's move on to the next slide. So cannabinoids and terpenoids. So when you inhale a puff of cannabis smoke, you are inhaling not just cannabinoids, but you're also inhaling terpenoids. Terpenoids are found in the essential oil of the cannabis flower, and they're found in somewhat significant quantities. So anybody who knows cannabis knows that you almost never smell the same bud twice. Each strain is somewhat unique in its aroma. They all share certain similarities, but they also have unique tones that make their aromas unique to that particular strain. Those aromas are made up of terpenes, like I mentioned, just like the aromas of other plants, and cannabis shares certain terpenes with other plants. For example, there's a terpene called limonene that is found in citrus fruits, but the exact same molecule is also produced in the cannabis flower and is what gives cannabis its kind of lemony, citrusy undertones, certain strains. So now we get back to the mystery of the kind of vast number of different effects found in cannabis. According to researchers at the University of Montana, the different effect flavors of cannabis are driven by what they coin entourage effects. Basically, the how you feel from a particular strain is driven not only by THC, but also by the various other cannabinoids and the terpenes present in the vapor. The ratio of THC to CBD tends to stay the same no matter what strain you're looking at, unless, of course, you're looking at high CBD strains such as Cannatonic or Harlequin. Those tend to have the ratio reversed, where CBD is significantly produced and THC is very, very minimally produced. So what changes across all these different strains and with all these different effects is the terpenes and the terpene profile. So it's the terpenes that drive these various effects, euphoric, sleepy, heavy, couch lock, giggly, giddy, creative. All those different effects are mostly driven by the different terpenes that are present in the different strains. So the way your strain tastes and smells is going to drive the effects you feel. And just to make it clear, it's not really that the aroma itself is causing the effect. It's not like I smell it and my nose picks up the aroma and it signals. I mean, that's minimal. That effect isn't very strong. What does happen, though, is when you actually inhale the vapors into your lungs, they get absorbed just the same way as THC does, and they get dispersed throughout your system, and that's how the terpenes have their effects. So a few basic rules of thumb for choosing strains based on effect could be categorized as follows. So sweet, flowery smelling strains tend to be relaxing and sleep-inducing. Sharp, piney strains tend to be alerting and somewhat euphoric. Sour strains tend to be relaxing and euphoric. And spicy, sharp-smelling strains tend to have better pain-relieving properties than other strains. And any strain that has minty tones to it tends to be good for nausea. So let's move on to the next slide. So right now I'm just going to walk you through a few of the most commonly found terpenes in cannabis, and I'll also kind of explain where else these terpenes are found, and then we'll move on to kind of talking a little bit about what PansInk's mixtures are and kind of how they can be useful for your dispensary and your patients. So the first terpene that we're going to talk about is alpha-pinene. Alpha-pinene is a terpene that is found in the cannabis flower resin, but it's also found in pine trees, spruce trees. Pretty much any tree that has a needle for its leaf contains alpha-pinene in its needles, and it gives it that distinctive piney aroma. Alpha-pinene is a really cool terpene. It has alerting effects. It is an anti-inflammatory agent. It helps to open up the bronchial passages in the lungs, and it also has an antimicrobial property. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So the next terpene we're going to talk about is D-limonene, which I mentioned before. D-limonene gives citrus fruits their kind of lemony, citrusy aromas. It's found in the peels of various citrus fruits, and it's also found in the cannabis flower, usually in the 10 to 20% range of the essential oil of most cannabis varieties. D-limonene has antidepressant and anti-anxiety properties. It tends to be calming and relaxing, but not necessarily super euphoric. It also has strong properties to stimulate the immune system and fight cancer. So let's move on to the next one. So the next terpene is called beta-myrcene. Beta-myrcene is a really, really interesting terpene, and it actually has come in under a lot of focus in the cannabis community lately. Beta-myrcene is the terpene that is found in mangoes, which give them the ability to, when you eat a mango about an hour before you take your cannabis medicine, it helps to boost and strengthen and improve the effects from the cannabis. Beta-myrcene has a citrus, kind of chocolatey, fruity tone to it, and it's the most prominent terpene found in cannabis resin. Myrcene, one of the ways that myrcene works is by lowering the resistance to absorbing cannabinoids and other terpenes in the brain. It lowers blood-brain barrier permeability. And it also has pretty cool physiological effects in that it is analgesic, meaning that it's pain relieving. It has anti-inflammatory properties. It's also somewhat sedating. So myrcene is really important, and if someone's cannabis strain doesn't have enough myrcene and they are looking for a sleep aid or pain relief, adding a little bit more myrcene to their routine can boost and make their effects better for them. Let's move to the next one. So linalool. Linalool is a terpene alcohol. It is found oftentimes in lavender, clary sage, and a lot of flowers have linalool in them. It's kind of spicy and flowery smelling, a little bit sweet, and it is primarily awesome for relieving anxiety, and if used in the evening time or if smoked in a cannabis strain in the evening time, it tends to produce sleep effects. So it makes you a little bit sleepier, makes you more able to fall asleep and get ready for bed. It's also pretty good for pain relief, analgesic. It also reduces motility, meaning if someone is epileptic, linalool helps to make it so their shakiness is reduced. So let's move to the next one. Last one we're going to talk about. The last terpene we're going to talk about is beta-caryophyllene. Beta-caryophyllene makes up the flavor of black pepper. It's also found in a lot of places. It's found in the essential oil of the cannabis flower, of course. Anywhere from 5 to 10% of the essential oil is made up of beta-caryophyllene. Beta-caryophyllene is an anti-inflammatory agent, and it also has sedating and sleep-inducing effects. It's also one of the only molecules that actually interacts with the cannabinoid receptor system in the human body. The cannabinoid receptor 2 is the receptor it interacts with, and this is hypothesized to be why it helps with inflammation. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So real quick, before we talk about the different PansInk mixtures, each of the terpenoids we've talked about, and that's just 5 of the thousands of terpenoids that are available in the world, from various plants, flowers, cannabis strains, etc. And each of these terpenes synergize with different cannabinoids and with one another. So, a cannabis strain that has high THC and has high beta-myrcene and high linalool tends to be a very relaxing and sleep-inducing strain, whereas strains that are high in, say, D-limonene and also are high in CBD tend to be calming and relaxing, but not quite in the euphoric, trippy way that, say, linalool is, but more just like kind of feels like it's tamped down on your system and your brain's just a little bit more calm. So, these interactions are kind of the bread and butter of why PansInk is effective, because basically what you're doing with PansInk is they're little drops and they're terpene-rich drops, and you drop a drop onto your bud before you smoke, you let it dry, and then by adding the terpenes that are in our mixes to the bud you're going to smoke or vaporize, it kind of helps to drive the effect profile to what you want, what your customer, what your patient wants. So let's talk about the different mixes that are available right now from PansInk. So we've got 3 mixes right now. There's a number of other mixes that are in the pipeline, which I'll show you in a moment. But the first mix that we have is called Drowsy. It's the purple bottle you see there. Drowsy kind of has a feel similar to a lavender indica strain, such as like a lavender kush. So It helps to relax people. It helps to get them ready for sleep. It kind of quiets the mind and makes the body feel kind of those ready for sleep feelings. It helps your eyes get a little puffier and you're kind of in that kind of like I'm ready for bed state. Daydream is our second mix. Daydream is similar to kind of like a lavender sativa feel, such as like a purple haze or lavender haze. It's also relaxing, good for anxiety. It also has alpha-pinene in it, which helps to make it a little bit more alerting and useful during the daytime. So Daydream is a very mellow feel that is kind of a nice smoke for the afternoon or evening. And finally, we have Focus. Focus is kind of similar to lemon sativa strains, which is like a lemon haze. It has D-limonene, has alpha-pinene, so it's useful during the daytime for people who need to smoke for, say, pain relief. They find that indica strain tends to be better for their pain, but they also need to kind of function during the day. So our mix Focus is great for those people because it kind of tends to bring up the feel of it and make it less heavy. So that's really nice for people who are going to be sitting and working, but also say they have back pain or sciatica or neuropathic pain, those sorts of things. It's useful for that. So those are the 3 PansInk mixtures that are available now. Our most popular seller is Daydream, and it's pretty nice. Let's move on to the ones that we're going to be releasing in the next few months. So we've got 4 mixes that we're planning to release in the coming months. The first 2 that we're going to be releasing, I would imagine they're going to be coming out in maybe May or June, and that's going to be Painless and Sensual. Those names may not be what we stick with, but Painless features beta-caryophyllene and alpha-pinene most primarily, and beta-myrcene, all of which are useful for relieving pain and reducing inflammation. Sensual features linalool, which helps to kind of relax the mind, and beta-caryophyllene also tends to help relax the body. And it just kind of gets you feeling kind of relaxed and good. The next 2 mixes that I think will probably be released in the June-July timeframe are an anti-nausea mix and a alertness mix, which will be a little bit more alerting than Focus. So the anti-nausea mix will also feature D-limonene, beta-caryophyllene, but it also will feature some terpenes from the mint family. Mint terpenes tend to be really excellent for reducing nausea and inducing hunger. So that'll be really helpful, we hope, for patients who are on chemotherapy or other drugs that lead them to have nausea or loss of appetite. And then Alert features alpha-pinene and a terpene called cineol, which is found in eucalyptus primarily, but is also sometimes found in cannabis resin. And these terpenes tend to improve memory and also kind of alert and make people feel more attentive and awake. So that's what we've got from PansInk and our mixes. I think we just have another slide just to kind of wrap things up. So we learned today a little bit about cannabinoids and terpenoids and how they interact in cannabis smokers. You can learn more about terpenes by visiting cannawannaby.com and by visiting PansInk website. We've just got a lot of literature and research on kind of what terpenes are all about and how they're useful in medical cannabis.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jack. It was a very informational webinar today. I saw some questions come in during the presentation, but before we ask you to do like a Q&A session, I'm going to turn this over to Megan from our sales team to just kind of talk to everyone about how you can get PansInk.
Great.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you all again for joining us today. If you are interested in checking out PansInk for yourself, I invite you all to go to canawannabuy.com and find it through our consumer webpage. If you are a dispensary owner and think this would be an excellent addition to your stock for your shelves in your dispensary or your head shop, join the CanaWannaBuy business team and sign up for a business membership where you'll have access to PansInk through our business portal. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. The phone number and the email are up on the screen. And check out CanaWannaBuy and PansInk today.
Perfect. Thanks, Megan. Okay, so Jack, let's do a Q&A session. So one of the first questions that came in is it safe to use the tinctures daily?
Yeah, it is. Just as it's safe to smoke cannabis daily, it's also safe to use our tinctures daily. We recommend that people use no more than 6 drops per day. This is because, just like with cannabis, if you use too much of a certain molecule, your body tends to build up a tolerance to it. So that's we kind of recommend that people not go overboard. But as far as the actual safety profile of the terpenes, they are eliminated from the body very, very quickly, and it takes between 10 and 20 minutes for the molecule to be eliminated through metabolism. So it is safe to use daily.
Awesome. Are there specific tinctures that work better with specific strands of cannabis?
Yes and no. Basically, if what you've got is there's a few different ways that PansInk can be useful. If you've got, say you've got a heavy strain and you didn't realize you were getting a heavy strain, but you want a lighter strain, PansInk can be really useful in those instances by adding, say, our mixed Daydream or our mixed Focus to kind of bring the alertness up and kind of take away from the heaviness of the strain. And the same thing goes for if you're using a sativa kind of light, heady strain, but you want to use it for sleep or for pain relief. Using our drowsy mix can improve and make that more of a heavy feel. And then, the other rule of thumb is basically if you have a strain that is already high in the terpenes that we have in any particular mix, so say you have a lavender kush strain, adding drowsy to it probably isn't going to do a lot because the terpenes that are available already in that strain are pretty much the same as the ones that are in our drowsy mix. So, like with like tends not to be as strong of an effect, but two different effects tend to kind of counteract each other.
Okay. So of the 3 formulas, do you suggest starting with a specific one?
Well, it really depends on what the customer or patient is looking for. Generally, our best seller is Daydream followed by Drowsy. Focus tends to almost take a little bit away from the high feeling, so a lot of people don't like that as much. So I'd say for anxiety and stress during the daytime, Daydream is a really great mix. For anxiety and stress at night, Drowsy is a great mix, especially if you need help getting to sleep. And then just for kind of daily productivity where you don't really want to feel much of the high from the cannabis, but you still want the pain relieving and anti-inflammatory properties, Focus is really nice. So it really just depends on the customer and on the patient and kind of what feels good to them. And that's another thing, is each person is kind of get the right feel for their certain mixes people love, certain mixes people aren't as into, and each person kind of finds out which one works for them.
Okay. Another question that came in is, if your body builds up a tolerance to certain terpenes, does that render cannabis strains containing those terpenes less effective?
Yes. Yes and no. For the kind of psychological kind of feelings that you notice when you smoke, like from the high, the terpenes, just like the cannabinoids, you can build up a tolerance to them. But sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. For the cannabis strains, basically, yes, you can build up a tolerance to terpenes just like you can to any particular cannabis strain. And so one of the cool things about PansInk is you can kind of mix up which terpenes you're getting, which kind of always keeps the terpene profile new, and your body doesn't have time to build up a tolerance to it.
Okay. So one of the last questions that came in was, what was the result from you using cannabis with your disc problem? And then which tincture would have helped you the most?
So, you know, using cannabis for my herniated disc has actually been really, really helpful. I strongly believe in the kind of pain-relieving and anti-inflammatory properties of cannabis, but I also think that it's somewhat of a kind of psychological effect too. I think the brain tends to, when it feels pain a lot, it tends to get used to that and becomes oversensitive to those pain receptors. And I think cannabis also tends to kind of relax that phenomenon in the mind, and that also helps it with its pain-relieving properties. As far as which mixes I like for my pain relief, I tend to really like Focus. And I also really like Drowsy. I sometimes even use it during the daytime when I don't have, a lot of kind of mind-focused work to do. It's just nice and relaxing, and it helps to relax my back. But all three mixes have terpenes in them that help with inflammation. So kind of no matter what you choose, there's always going to be some pain-relieving properties in any of our mixes.
Awesome. So I have one last question that just came in. Is there any THC content in your product?
No, there's no THC content in our product. There's no actual cannabis in our product. Our product is made with the essential oils that come from other plants, such as like the essential oil of lavender, the essential oil of lemon, the essential oil of hops, and a few other essential oils. And these essential oils have the same terpenes that are found in cannabis, and so we kind of borrow the terpenes from these other plants and help and use them to kind of create our different mixes.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we got. Do you have any last thoughts you want to let everybody know before we log off here?
Yeah. Terpenes are pretty much found everywhere in our foods, anything that has a flavor to it usually comes from a terpene or some synthetic flavoring that's based on a terpene. So they're very safe. They're found in our teas. They're found in our foods. And then I think the only other thing that I would throw out is I believe that Canna Wanna Buy has some PansInk to give away today to the attendees. And I think Canna Wanna Buy representative will get in contact with you if you're a winner. So good luck.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we thank everybody else for joining us today. We are going to have more future webinars coming up, so just keep an eye out for that. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. So yeah, we hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you learned a lot.